The light in Luna's cell was dim and flickering, casting fractured shadows along the walls that danced like phantoms from a life she barely remembered. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, as if holding it would anchor her to some reality she could still believe in. But belief had become a luxury she could no longer afford. Each breath felt borrowed, each thought caged between survival and surrender. She had once believed that truth would free her, that if she simply waited, if she trusted the system, the people she had once called family, then justice would prevail. But justice was a mirage. And the deeper she sank into the prison's concrete belly, the more it became clear. No one was coming. Until she did. The first time Luna heard her name whispered with hushed urgency by the guard, she thought it was a mistake. "You've got a visitor," he said, voice low and unreadable. Luna blinked. She hadn't received any approved names on her list. Still, something in his tone unnerved her. As she was led down the hallway, cuffed and guarded, she felt the air grow colder, the silence around her stretching too long, too controlled. And then she saw her. Sheila Carter. Elegant in black, unbothered by the sterile room around her, her eyes sharp and unreadable, like a hawk watching prey still deciding if it's worth devouring. Luna froze mid-step. Her breath caught in her throat, and her instinct screamed. Sheila smiled, not warmly, but as though savoring a private joke. "Sit, Luna," she said smoothly, her voice like honey dripped over broken glass. "We have much to discuss." Luna sat, but every part of her remained alert. "Why are you here?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "To offer you freedom," Sheila replied, tilting her head, her smile never faltering. "But of course, freedom comes with conditions. You've heard of deals with the devil, haven't you?" The silence between them pulsed like a second heartbeat. Luna had grown wiser during her time behind bars. She had learned to listen not just to words, but to tone, to gesture, to what was deliberately left unspoken. Sheila wasn't here out of pity. She didn't see Luna as a victim. She saw her as a weapon. "You're not here for me," Luna said, her voice steady despite the thunder roaring in her chest. "You want something. What is it?" Sheila chuckled, folding her hands together. "You're sharp. That's good. Because the people who locked you in here, Steffy, Finn, and the Spencers, don't care about you. You're just a liability to them. A walking scandal. But to me, you're potential." Luna bristled. Her whole life had been defined by people seeing her as a thing to be controlled, by her mother, by the men who twisted her choices, by a world that never stopped punishing her for one night she barely remembered. And now, here was Sheila, cloaking manipulation in the illusion of alliance. "I don't want revenge," Luna said quietly. "I want peace. I want my baby to be born free." Sheila's eyes glittered. "Then let me help you get out of here. I have access to lawyers who don't ask questions. I have contacts in places these people only pretend to control. I can make your case disappear from the court docket. Or," she leaned forward, her smile thinning, "I can make sure the world never sees you as anything but a dangerous, delusional woman who seduced a Spencer and faked a pregnancy for attention." Luna stared at her, pulse racing. There it was. The threat beneath the kindness. The cost of refusing. "I've helped others before," Sheila said, tone softer now. "Mine's weaker than yours. Heart's smaller. But you're different. You're smart. You're wounded. You're ready. With my guidance, you could become something they can't stop." "And what would I become?" Luna whispered, already afraid of the answer. Sheila smiled again. "A storm." Days passed. The offer lingered in Luna's thoughts like smoke, suffocating, ever-present. She didn't trust Sheila, not for a moment. But she also couldn't ignore what she had seen. The guards who suddenly treated her more carefully. The mysterious man in a suit who left her a sealed envelope filled with legal documents arguing for wrongful imprisonment. The transfer papers that arrived 2 days later moving her from the general population to medical isolation. All of it bore Sheila's fingerprints. This wasn't just talk. Sheila was moving pieces. And Luna didn't know how much longer she could resist. Each night, She held her stomach and imagined a world outside the walls. She imagined while holding the baby, confused and conflicted but present. She imagined a courtroom that believed her. A future where her child had a name and a legacy not stained by her mistakes. But she also imagined something else. Electra Forrester smiling beside Will, wearing rings that weren't hers, claiming a life Luna felt had been stolen. It wasn't jealousy. It was survival. If she didn't fight for her place, she would be erased. One evening, the guard brought her another envelope. Inside was a simple note. You have until tomorrow. Decide. No signature.
Just the time.
Midnight. Luna barely slept. She walked her cell like a caged animal, thoughts spiraling between morality and fear. Was accepting Sheila's help the same as becoming her? Could she live with that? Could she survive without it? When morning came, she stared at her reflection in the scratched metal mirror and barely recognized herself. Her face was thinner, her eyes colder, but her spine was straighter. And when the clock struck midnight, she whispered a single word into the silence. Yes. There was no joy in the moment she saw the two pink lines. Steffy Forrester stood alone in the silence of the Cliff House bathroom, the sound of the ocean distant and muffled through thick windows. The test shook slightly in her hands. She had always imagined this moment, another child, another branch growing on her family tree. But this wasn't a celebration. It was a bomb dropped into an already burning landscape. Her stomach turned. Her fingers trembled. The truth was undeniable. She was pregnant. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Outside that room, her world was already unraveling. The walls of her carefully built life, marriage, motherhood, career, family name, had started to crack under the weight of secrets and obsession. Ever since Luna had returned like a ghost dragging chains behind her, everything had changed. Finn had changed. The warmth in his eyes had hardened into something darker. The way he spoke about Luna had grown harsher, colder, more controlling. At first, she thought it was grief, confusion, perhaps guilt. But now, it felt like possession. Finn didn't just want to protect their family, he wanted to purge anything that threatened his control over it. And now this. A child. A weapon in the wrong hands. When Steffi finally stepped out of the bathroom, the late afternoon sun was bleeding gold through the windows. She saw Finn in the kitchen, standing rigid, scrolling through his phone, probably on some call with the Forrester legal team. Lately, his days were divided between plotting against Luna, pressuring Ridge into tightening security, and silencing anyone who questioned his campaign to cleanse their lives of chaos. He had already begun making noise about Luna being unfit, about stepping in personally to ensure she never got near Will or any Spencer again. And now, if he knew about this pregnancy, Steffi had no doubt he would double down. She didn't tell him right away. How could she? The man she loved, the father of her children, was no longer listening. He was commanding, instructing, demanding allegiance under the guise of love. She watched him in the days that followed, each moment confirming her worst fear. This child, this innocent heartbeat not yet heard, would become his next justification. When she did tell him, 3 days later, after a board meeting and a forced dinner with Ridge and Brooke, his reaction wasn't joy. It was strategy. His eyes flared with adrenaline. He pulled her into his arms and whispered promises about how this changed everything. How now, more than ever, he needed to secure their future. Luna would be gone, Sheila locked out for good, Ridge forced to back his play. This wasn't just a pregnancy, it was a weapon. A reason to reshape the world in Finn's image of safety. But Steffi didn't feel safe. She felt trapped. She had heard those words before. Long ago, from Liam, when the lines between protector and prisoner began to blur. But this was worse. Because this wasn't manipulation born of insecurity. It was purpose-driven extremism. Finn believed what he was doing was right. And that made it harder to fight. In the weeks that followed, Finn grew more intense. He began making calls to security consultants without asking her. He proposed moving them into a more secure compound, just until the baby is born. He told Taylor, told Ridge, told Thomas. Steffi didn't even have time to process her own emotions before the narrative was already moving forward, one she had no part in writing. And still, Luna's shadow hovered. Though no one had seen her publicly since her prison break, rumors rippled across Los Angeles. Anonymous tips. Sightings. The sense that she was watching. Finn obsessed over it. He stayed up late at night reviewing camera feeds. He questioned employees. He whispered theories about Sheila being behind it all. And he wasn't wrong, but his fixation was smothering everything else, including Steffi. She tried to talk to him. She tried to remind him of joy, of the beauty of what they were supposed to be building. But he was already too far gone. One night, she stood outside on the balcony, hand resting on her stomach, and stared at the horizon until her eyes burned. And in that darkness, the question came, one she had been too afraid to face. Was she tethering herself, and this unborn child, to a man spiraling into darkness? If she stayed, would she be complicit? If she left, would she destroy her family? The questions didn't have answers, but they had echoes. Brooke began asking quiet questions. Taylor, concerned, suggested therapy. Even Hope, distant as she'd become, warned her gently about ignoring red flags. And still, Steffi remained silent. Because the moment she spoke it into reality, it would be real. The fracture would become a fault line. And she wasn't ready, until Finn crossed one too many boundaries. He showed up at Forrester unannounced. Interrupted a private strategy meeting. Demanded Ridge approve a public statement declaring Luna persona non grata. When Ridge hesitated, Finn threatened to go to the press himself.
He claimed it was about safety.
About optics. About control. But for Steffi, it was a mask falling. This wasn't the man she had built her life with. This was someone who believed control was love. That night, they fought.
Hard.
Words flew. Accusations hurled. Steffi demanded he step back. He said she was naive. She screamed that he was scaring her. He went quiet, too quiet. And when she whispered, "I don't know who you are anymore," his silence confirmed her deepest fear. The next morning, she packed a bag. Not to leave, but to think. She went to Malibu alone, stayed at the guest house her grandmother once owned. She needed to hear her own thoughts without the noise, the eyes, the spinning chaos. And for the first time in weeks, she felt something she hadn't felt in ages, clarity. She wasn't just protecting her unborn child. She was deciding what kind of mother she wanted to be. Would she teach her child to survive in a gilded cage of control? Or would she show them what it meant to break free? She returned to LA.
Changed.
And she knew the decision ahead would cost her everything. But it might also save her life. And the child with